Uh, Hi,
Hey, all right. I figured my way in.
so nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you, see you the first time. Well, second, but really the first.
Oh, yeah, I remember I sent you a picture of the cover.
Right. And you sent me a little film of you with your family, your father, I believe.
Oh, yeah. And I sent you a film of the party in Jordan when we were, remember, of me playing suicide at parties in Jordan?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to I want to speak. Okay, so right now in our part of the world, even though I am in Montreal now,
Oh, good.
things are like at least I don't know where to look. Part of 30% of Palestine is about to get whatever's left is about to get annexed
Yeah,
next month.
yeah.
The Egyptian government is cracking down on people in our community for the newly installed Egyptian government for um, whether protesting or expressing or
That's
for
all.
like everywhere we look
Mhm.
is just terrible, and like we're surrounded with, like, we can't look inside, we can't look outside, we can't look anywhere. And and I want to make reference. So and then I want to start with you, because you said once that you were born into, you said there was an old world was ending. What did you like? How was that old world? Can you tell me about how that old world was?
Well, the old world was, I don't know, I may have been referring to the rock world,
Oh, okay.
but we can, that can be amplified to, of course, expanded. But suicide came in when rock was not over. There was still room to explore in the form, which isn't always the case in any music or art. But the old world, I guess, also of 60s rock, big studio recordings, big, bands on a certain, that had run its course. It was starting to run its course to me. Uh, Economically, too, it didn't make the same sense. Money was changed. The whole economic climate. It was after Vietnam and after the Vietnamese War, although we started during it, at the end of it, uh, there wasn't as much money in the streets. The working class was started to feel more defined in what they needed to do, just jobs, food. So that was a new period. And suicide seemed to reflect that because we were living that too. Um, I think there's definitely a feeling of a new world and an old world ending, but it hasn't ended yet, and not enough for my like. Um, I guess we have to continue to struggle, have hope, dream. I mean, the Palestinian situation, obviously, you know better than I do, more firsthand. This is nothing uh, new. And while it's getting extreme, like what's happening here, it has never been as extreme in terms of leadership politically. The pressure that's coming down in a way that is causing, and the climate of tolerance, you might say, globalism, of multi-ethnicism, which is the future and is the present, because that's the world we live in. We don't live in a mono-ethnic world, and this country is far from it. But to try to revert it back to that, just for examples, that's an old world in my estimation. And many know that's the future. We're going to bring that back. And that's a conflict now. And it's up to the people, it'll be up to the people in this country, the majority of people, to decide where they want to go. And if they decide that, and soon, it'll be the end of a certain world, because just this world we've had here. Now, that world also reflects, of course, on Palestine, because, as you know, with all the nations that have sent uh, protest against the next annexation, the only one uh, in the West of significance was U.S. is the one that's supporting it. Now, that's tied totally together with the kind of the views of the leadership that's here now, you see. There are a lot of people with you and with all of us, as you see from the last few weeks, what's been happening worldwide, from what's been happening here, who have made that much more apparent that a new world is necessary. In some ways, they are bringing in a new world. Even this virus is part of a new world, because for many generations, nobody's ever had this before and had to deal with this. And that also changes consciousness. But where it's going, the future is always right here and right at the present. We have to keep going, I think, and that's the future. The old world is always ending. It ended yesterday, it ended this minute, it ended just as I finished my sentence. And
like you said, it hasn't ended enough.
it hasn't ended enough for certain very intolerant, violent, cruel attributes of mankind that are embedded, when they're embedded in the power of mankind, they always are to an extent. I mean, power represents money, ruling class. But there has to be a certain balance to keep it from going totally off the map like it has in certain times in history. And when it's not, when it's unbalanced, or when it represents a certain minority that have a radical view that is negative for mankind, for all of mankind going forward, then it's not enough. No, then it's a danger sign.
Yeah. So I'm curious. Did you ever? So when you were okay, so we'll talk in a bit, because it's a new audience who doesn't really, maybe not, some of them don't know about the struggles that you faced artistically. But to start, did you face any struggles to be who you are personally growing up?
Personally, sure. Outside of wanting to be a musician,
or including wanting to be a musician, like
yeah. Well, I think we all struggle. That's nature. I think we're born into a family, and as infants, we have a certain personality already, but we're much more narcissistic in a natural way. We need to be taken care of certain things. We can't do it for ourselves, so we need the home, parental shelter, whatever we have, to try to nurture us to get to a place of autonomy. Once we do, and we could start to be even 10, 11, 12 years old, we already have our own minds. Now, it's not totally separate. It depends from our parents, say, but usually there's a struggle somewhat of growing up. It can be very difficult depending on the parties involved. They call it the breaking away. The child, like a chicken in an eggshell, a baby, has to eventually break away from the family. That's nature. Otherwise, if he doesn't do that, he's never going to go on and have his own life, his own family. And that's unnatural, of course. So that process of breaking away is always just that, with very more understanding guides, you might say, parents. It can be easier. Personally, of course, there's, you're finding out about yourself at the same time, your attractions, who you like, what you like. certainly growing up for me and getting so far into music very early and realizing that's what I wanted to do with my life was already setting up a minority view. Of course, the majority of kids my age were not thinking that way, and a few were, sure. But they wouldn't even let themselves think that way because it was not the safe way to go. It's not the way that, you know, and and then the fact that there was really, for this time in the new music, there were no schools, there was no format. Almost any other profession, you have a certain path that you can follow. If you go to school, you get a degree, you get degrees on your own, then you can get formations, you can start a practice sometimes. What is a new 20th century jazz or rock musician? Basically, the musics were totally taboo in the schools for many years as serious music and all these things they call them.
Really? How can you explain that? So they were taboo in school?
Well, they were taboo. If you went to, well, in high school, forget it, because high school, there wasn't a lot of music. You're lucky if you had a music class, but it was usually to hear a few records or to learn an instrument. But I know colleges, from what I saw and people I knew, the music departments, if you went to even a conservatory, Juilliard, all the greatest conservatories, or a regular college that was one of the best, say, in music studies, at one of the best music departments, absolutely not. I mean, there wasn't even a jazz class. Eventually, they brought in, maybe I remember years ago, I mean, that time, they brought in one speaker who was an author of jazz books, and he had like a once a month or once a week class. It had nothing to do with music training. Was all classical, all traditional, and I'm not putting it down because that's great training. But if your aspirations was to be part of the world that you were in now, like say be part of a jazz band and be able to do that, master that, you had no ties. School couldn't prepare you for that unless you could study what you're learning. And it didn't even make sense, a lot of it at that point, because you're going out into the world of, like you say, the new world, and classical in some ways was something that you recognize, you could try to learn to an extent, but it was also dichotomous at that point. Jazz was saying also something radically new that was saying, no, it's not the old world. Because we're not the people that, those people have isolated us to the point where we've forged, out of our own isolation and our own vocabulary of music, we forged an identity that reflects us. And if you wanted to join that world, or the rock and roll, now rock and roll was a dirty word, in some ways probably still is, much later than even jazz. Eventually, schools, I understand, had jazz departments, colleges brought in departments. And you could go to a special jazz school, but that was different. That wasn't a regular college. I mean, you know. But rock and roll, no, I don't know what they're doing now, but you know, even to study the great R&B or the great rock period. You know, I ran into some woman once in the neighborhood. She said she was on the scene then, like Max's and whatnot. Now she's got a course teaching in like NYU once a week or once 2 weeks of history of modern punk. She's teaching punk as one of her classes.
Wow,
Yeah.
crazy.
That's very late. So yeah, there was sure there was a struggle there. But the struggle, like any other struggle, it was when you know what you love or who you love.
Yeah.
The love keeps you inspired.
I want to ask, do you feel when you hear art, do you feel like you can hear the freedom of someone or their inner individuality? Or like you did actually say this a bit ago, you said who you are. But yeah, I feel like it reflects the freedom that a person has experienced in life in general.
I think it does. Well, it also reflects the aspiration to express oneself fully and to reflect what one feels is true in life. Now, a lot of that is not a choice, I think. You find it more and more as you say, no, I'm going to keep doing this. When you reach a plateau and you have no money, your whole society is telling you, listen, what are you doing? You can't. You're getting further and further from the mainstream as you're getting better and better at your art because you're studying, practicing, whatever you do to, and you're going further and further because there's less, and all those situations, of course, when you decide at all those junctions, which could be every day or every few months, whatever, I'm going to continue. I'm going to continue. I'm not going to take risk into. It's a part of maybe an autism, partly an insanity. But most people take risk into consideration for whatever they do in life. Certain people, I just happen to be one of them, said, no, when I get out of high school, I'm going even deeper into that. I have a lot of work to do, and I'm going to practice. First of all, to practice for something that you haven't accomplished yet is already an incredible faith when I thought about it later, because you don't know if you're going to achieve it. You don't know if you're going to play that way, which you're hearing certain other people play in terms of that technical even mastery, because you don't have it yet. But you have this, you don't doubt that if you work hard enough, like it's always said, you're going to achieve it. So what do? You go out into the world and say, no, man, I'm going to work at this. So I'm not going to take this job. I'm not going to take this job. If I take this job, it's going to be, if it doesn't get in the way of my time and energy doing my work. Okay? My work, of course, is not paying me anything. Nobody's paying me. I'm not getting jobs, man. Hardly at this point, if at all. So what is there in the human being already, me say, that was there that wasn't consciously developed by me, you see? It's in my map, what is in my genetic or ancestral or something in me. See, now suicide obviously were two also very, as you say, uncompromising individuals. Alan basically is a visual artist, but once he decided to be a musical artist, he was already, even beyond me, because he's a little older than I was, he was already, had been uncompromising for many years. And he wasn't about to go back into society. You know, if you got I remember him once, maybe he got a job where we were rehearsing, which was where he was living, which was close to on the street at the sketch class gallery we started rehearsing. Somebody gave him a job running the freight elevator, which was like 10 feet from where he was sleeping on the floor in a little room. So, okay, he took it, you know.
Oh.
I mean, and of course, once you find yourself as what you are, you're looking the way you want to look, you're feeling the way you want to look, you're not going to fit into, nobody's probably going to hire you, first of all. You got to really change, like going into the military, cutting off all your hair, all that. The superficial example. But what is there, say, in he, say, or in I, say, in Coltrane, say, Miles Davis, to give examples, Beethoven, to go in that direction, where first of all, they are it's an obsession, it's a compulsion. It's like love, you see. But love that won't accept compromise. But something or someone matches into something in your animus, like to say, innate code that that's for you. A lot of people, again, will say, okay, it's for me. I'll do it on the side. I'll do it as a hobby. But I mean, I'm not going to go out into the world like this. So they're more clear and more sane in a way. But so again, I think a lot of that is already printed. The capability or the potential for that in me was certainly printed. Whether I kept that potential and made a reality of it probably had to also do with my time, my generation, my environment, what was happening in the world, what I felt was true, like I said before, and strong. And when I heard certain music, it reflected that truth. What I felt moved me musically, what made me want to dance, and what didn't. Taste on a simple plane chooses a lot. We all choose the musics we like, the art we like, and we do that since we're kids in school. Why? It's, and then that taste develops through time to see, for some things we don't understand right away. Later we understand, well, that's a truth. That's really relating to something happening now or happening for that person.
I love that you said it's a love that you don't need to compromise with. And it's true. For me, I kind of do side jobs just because I never want to I don't care if I never make a cent, or I don't that, maybe so I wanted to ask you, like, to what extent is being an artist a choice for you? But I think you kind of answered that when you said it's in your DNA.
It's a choice for sure, because you have to choose, as I mentioned, consciously at certain times. Sometimes you look, you go like in, like say, agony and ecstasy. Well, you go in ecstasy because you're creating something that gives you ecstasy, or you're really creating your own world. And sometimes I experienced when, it was like suddenly I'd wake up or go to sleep and look around and say, where the hell am I? Because I'd feel so like on a raft. It's like you've been out on this beautiful ocean voyage. It's so incredible. But then you wake up one day and there's nobody around. There are no boats anywhere to be seen. And there haven't been for a long time.
Yeah.
You get a sudden jolt of your
reality,
of your separation. So those times, but if you don't run back, and usually, you get over, already what you took yourself that far out. So you're not immediately going back, probably. Some people do, and some people have a real crisis at that point. But yeah, that's a conscious decision too, but there is that subconscious, I guess, sure, element. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Since when did you start making money off your art? Like, when did it get easier to persist?
Well, if we talk about money, like $5.
Were you ever able to live off your art or to support you?
Not for a long time. And of course, depending how you live, I've kept my living also out. I didn't just keep it. It was a necessity that kept me in a very non expensive, in terms of lucrative lifestyle. So I could never afford that, of course, and not totally afford even to live autonomously. But eventually, still being in that spot, when more money started coming in, I found, sure, it was easier to survive for basics. However, as you probably know, the unknowing, the unsureness of that life, of this life, even up to now, you never know exactly when your next earnings are coming in. It could be tomorrow, they could be 3 months from now, they could be a year from now. So that certain insecurity is always there. But I mean, it's less when you're, say, on your first rowing out to sea for many years. And sometimes you get way out there, and you could be now the artist that you really, I mean, you could be now even a master at what you're doing. Like if you read the history of so many great artists, composers, yeah, they reached that place, but their circumstances, because of the circumstances of being that artist in the world, are so dire, even psychologically, that it's difficult. But I'm thankful. You know, I'm thankful that I've been given what I have, the rewards, and you know, I've only started. I would say now that it's still not a. There's nothing guaranteed. I mean, it's nothing assured. But I live on so little. I mean, I really live on more because when I have, and that's good. But I don't buy. I don't need. I'm glad in the way I am the kind of artist I am, because a lot of artists, as you know, they make money. They go into movies. They open up businesses, perfume. Uh, you know, fine. Even write books. I never wanted to do anything except what I do.
But you know what? You bought your time in the end. You may have not spent money, but you didn't. You didn't spend a lot of money. Like living your life was not expensive. But if you did have to play the game, and then you would have sold your time. You would have sold just time on Earth.
Where to put it? Time is of the essence. I mean, now I feel it. I've certain things I really love and want to do creatively. You know, and when you put that next to preparing your food, doing your certain amount of business, a certain amount, of course, a little bit of recreation time. That's stuff that has to do with my aspiration, my compulsion, my obsession, my love. Hey, that's time. So if somebody says to me, I mean, I've had recently, sometimes, oh, we want to do a documentary on suicide, this movie. And we'll need Martin. Alan's not even here anymore. We'll need Martin. This is just an example. You know, we're going to do a lot of interview footage. We're walking around the streets of New York. Like a lot of times people say, oh, I'd love to do a photo session of you. Can we do it? It'll only take an hour. You know, man.
Yeah,
that's that time in the day. That's that one day already where I'm not working at what I want to do. You might to use the word work figuratively, maybe. And no, I'm not giving that up, man. You know, it's like if I want to give it up, I'll give it up now because we're talking, because it means more to me. So it's worth it.
Oh, yes, and I'm not a professional, but it means a lot. I really appreciate it because, yeah, I don't know, your art was a mother to my life, a second mother.
Okay. Well, you know, it's great knowing that. Listen.
And not just to me, but also to Leith. He did the paintings for the shows, and Leith, I would say, is someone who is extremely misunderstood, and his art is perceived like. There was an auction in Jordan, and not long when I was there, and I forgot, it was one of these big institutional international companies, and they told him, and the curator, they asked the curator to select the artists. It's not them who are selecting, and the curator selected Leith, and they told him that his work was too risque. so he's someone who's really also struggling to be himself, socially, artistically, in every way. And your work was a mom to him.
Tell me.
Your work was a mother to him, for sure.
Oh, listen, you know, those things, sometimes in moments when you're, because we do work somewhat in isolation, of course. Writers sit and write all day, you know, they're not out partying with a lot of people. Some are, if they get very successful, they start to write less. Painters paint in their studio. Musicians create. Of course, when we play live, there are more people around, but that's, you know, seldom. Of course, now it's not happening at all, but certain musicians are more geared to playing live than working, recording at home, and some are more into creating new work at home, and they balance it. So during those times when you're really solo, you might say composing, for lack of another word, but you know, so, no, sometimes it's good to, you remember certain things, or somebody emails you and says something like that. You say, hey, wait a minute, yeah, there is some, it means something to somebody, and it reminds you, or when you have down days anyway about something totally different. But no, you should know that you know, not to make you feel better even, but interviews, maybe the last couple of years, I've been turning down most of them. You know, for the same reason I said, you know, a lot of times the questions are all the same, but they're coming from the same place, basically. And I don't need to rehash. A lot of them want to hear about New York in the 70s or suicide history. I've been over it so many times. And what I love talking to them when I do it, if I do it, again, that's my, say, 2-3 hours of that day I wanted to spend on my shit. So I select. You know?
Thank you for that. It means a lot. I chose you actually for the people who pretty much need a mom. Like, and that's the point of this, is to empower people who are struggling for their individuality. And especially in our part of the world, we are very communal societies, so it's even harder to truly be individualized. Maybe we can bring you to play shows in the Middle East.
To play
shows in Jordan, Palestine, Lebanon, Egypt.
Good.
There are, you know, I play Suicide at every party there.
You know, I'm also very selective about shows, but I do everything that is really, I do, you know, it depends on the timing too, but I do a lot of shows during the year until the last few months, of course. And a show in one of those 3 countries would not be a question for me.
Oh my God. We would do all 3.
If it could be arranged, you know, I could get enough covered to not to go broke doing it.
Oh my God. I mean, if you are interested, that would be the first thing. Like me, you know, that painter, him and I became friends through our love for Suicide, by the way. So like, we always dream about this. Oh yeah, and speaking of that, I have a question. You always talk about dreams, dream baby dream. What does that mean to you? Because it means everything to me too, dream. I'm constantly dreaming, but what does it mean to you?
I'm going to say also, because you mentioned before how a friend of yours said you're dreaming, basically, if I interpreted that right, about doing that show you wanted to do. I say here's to the dreamers.
Oh.
The dreamers are always the future, and they are the ones that lead civilization to the next place. Not every single dream and every single one, and they also the ones who pay the price of that isolation and judgment sometimes, because they're not practical, they're not realistic, so-called. The dreamers I say here's to them. But all the great artists you hear and you talk about and you've heard in history and now, they were all dreamers. They tried to make their dreams into a reality, but the reality of their dreams through their art. They tried to make their art into the reality of their lives because that was their dream. But if they weren't dreamers, they would have never thought to create on the level they did. Coltrane would have never reached the level he reached. As an example, I mean, you have the same examples in rhythm and blues, rock. Miles would have never continually said, I'm going to try this, and reach the mastery.
Persisted.
You see, they dreamed. And dream also means that they envisioned something in their head that wasn't necessarily yet at their fingers, that they didn't necessarily yet be able to concretize it. They said, yeah, but I think, wow, that would be incredible. Let me try for that. And sometimes it takes 2 months, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years with a lot of trial and error, because your dreams are not always, you're going to find as you make them into realities that some things work, some things don't. It's like working on a piece of music. But you have visions as you go along. Oh yeah, no, it's not going exactly how I thought it was 2 months ago, but it's giving me an idea. Wow, it is going. And maybe that's what led me to now. And no, those are, and that's the only people I've ever known really in my life that were important to me and close, because those were the dreamers, man. I could see, it's understandable why. I didn't know it. Couldn't conceptualize it always, but so yeah, we gotta, we are like in a way, they talk about a soul family. We are a soul family. You could be a minority of 2, say minority of 1, and you're still a soul family, because there are other people like you. And those are the ones, some kind of civilization says, oh no, he's crazy, he's not gonna do this, throw rocks at them. And eventually, Galileo, if you're familiar with, was basically given capital punishment by the church when he came out and said, the earth revolves around the sun. Total blasphemy at that time. He was the greatest scientist of his time, in many ways, time before and after, as great. And he studied it. It came from his head to try to discover more about the universe, like with Einstein said. But he made that discovery based on empirical evidence that he found. And the church said, no, you're going against, of course, the common teachings that we're trying to teach, and what, everything that we've taught and everything we want, the whole, what I'm saying. You are to be punished, take you into the tower. And what happened, of course, decades later, it was discovered that the earth revolved around the sun. I'm sorry, planets revolve around the sun. They don't revolve around the earth, which is being taught. And the earth is not flat like it used to be taught, where if you go too far, you just fall off. It's round, all those things. It was the dreamers who found those things. So keep dreaming.
This last 2 or whatever of you answering this question was beautiful. I almost going to cry from your words. They're so beautiful. Yeah, I actually once asked you, but I got shy and it got awkward. So then I retreated. If you could handwrite the words "dream, baby, dream," so I can tattoo it, because I have a tattoo with my dad's handwriting. It says "create dangerously." Yeah, and then I wanted to get one from Drew from Coil, because on one of their albums it's written "persistence is all." And but before that I want "dream, baby, dream" with your handwriting. Dream, baby, dream. The message to all the world.
We can do that. I just
You could
It's
just
not my
take.
choice, but do you want to, I mean, to say, it's not for me to say, but do you really want to have, are they permanent tattoos and you want to have all of them permanently? It's a lot of tattoos, but that's your decision.
It's just the word dream, baby, dream.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That answers my question.
Is there anything that's more permanent than those words?
If I understand your feeling about it, about those words, and if you say so, that gives it even more meaning to me. You see?
Imagine if it stops being permanent.
I know.
That would be horrible.
To dream is to live. It's to imagine, to hope. What is a hope? It's a dream. What is a
Yeah.
faith? It's a dream. What is a
I,
faith in God for all the religious people who would say this is blasphemy? It's a dream.
I'm working in healthcare, and
It's a dream. Yeah, I'm hearing
I'm working in healthcare, and at the beginning of the pandemic, I'm working with seniors and managing health for seniors. And at the beginning, it was so hard. Either wanted to, I was like, either I want to give up on healthcare, which is terrible, or I want to, I just like, I cannot give up, but I really want to give up. It was very difficult. And from those conditions, this dream came. I was really under pressure, and this dream changed my whole happiness. I would go to work every day and die, come home and start writing. And, I emailed you and then I disappeared for a bit and then I came back. Like, look at all these notes. This dream came out of like really extreme conditions. And I just wanted the values of everything that I've ever done and every friend I've ever had. Like you said, your friends. And I realized when people ask me, what is your sound? I always said, like, I don't have a sound. But I realized recently, it's those values that's common in everything.
That's right. That's right. The way you've answered one of your earlier questions very well, maybe better than I could, that I did. That a lot of what gives you that sense you have authenticity are your values too. So your values are one and one inside the choices you make. You make choices within your music or your art. And that's based on your values and your taste. No, that color should go here, not here, here. Somebody else the same age, the same everything will say, no, I like this color here. I like this color here. What's right? What's wrong? Neither. But your values, not just in art, because maybe you studied it less or more, in life, your willingness, say, to compromise, your feeling about things. You read a news story today about this young girl in Egypt, and you feel something, not just because you're close also to the region and the people.
Yeah, because it's against you as someone who's also
You
persisting.
you could be Canadian, you could be from New Zealand and read that, and you're going to feel the same thing or very close to it because it's something about already in you see. And somebody else will read it and say, okay, another news story, too bad at the most. And then you have all the possibility, the variations of reactions, of anything that are too ridiculous to try to repeat. But yeah, values.
Yeah, beautiful way to connect it. And this, now what we're saying is what I meant by, I'm not making the show because of you being a band or your art. I'm making this as a set of values, and your art encompass these values, and your work is also a mother to people with those values.
Well, okay, maybe mother's even better than a father because mother would be the sustaining force. And yeah, I mean, thank you.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we kind of covered and got to the very core.
It's up to you. You want to go on, think about it for a second. I'm just going to grab something quick and come right back, okay?
All right.
All right. Think about where you want to go. All right.
Oh yes, very important last one.
Mm.
Do you have any words for people today or tomorrow or anytime who are fighting and enduring? Okay, I just want to tell whoever is listening here that I didn't go over it because you went over it many times about how at shows people would throw things at you and how people, Drew McDowell said he saw a hammer thrown at you once. And so you obviously really also struggled for your, to be uncompromised. But do you have any advice for people such as Late, such as others who are trying to persist against all odds?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the word is persist. Find a way to sustain endurance. Now, one of the obvious things that we need to endure is a certain amount of sustenance, food, shelter. So we try to find a way to provide for ourselves in a way that allows us and leaves us the most space and room, or make more space if we don't have it, to do our love, what we're persisting in, so we can persist. Persistence sometimes over time means we keep doing it and we keep enduring, but during the endurance, we'll find we're close to that love, which means we're close to that ecstasy, you might say. And to always keep learning, with studying, mostly about what we do, of course, but anything else that to never not be curious. We have to continually feed our curiosity. Everything is going to be used in our art, or it's not going to be used, but it gets edited out. But ideas, the food really of what we do, it keeps us sustaining our ideas. See?
And
Ideas
dreams.
are like our food. And they can come from anywhere, but of course, the actual material ideas come from our own art.
My God, I just realized it's an idea and then it becomes a dream.
Yeah, an idea becomes a dream. Right. One idea inspires. If that idea, imagine, inspires sometimes where that idea is leading to, which is a dream, which can also manifest itself in your art, say, music, your writing. So it's really just a matter of, we are in a way outlaws, in a sense, not in the true sense, but in the sense of vis-a-vis so-called normalcy, the ebb and flow of everyday commerce life. We're not the mainstream, and that's just the way it is. We don't care. In some ways, we would like to live as if we were, in terms of the security of it, but a lot of the mainstream has always bugged us too. Obviously, that's why we chose not to be part of it. So for every person you're referring to, they can't accept that much of the mainstream either. That's why they stayed with their drawing, their writing, their music, you see? Values. The values of the mainstream have to work for yours, match yours enough. Otherwise, for most people that they do it anyway, and that's called compromise. And that's not always good. It limits the personal creation and growth of that individual. You see it over time. But in any case, yeah, just find a way to live without taking too many chances. In other words, if you go to jail, you're not going to be able to do what you need to do too. So you have to try to find a way. And sometimes not to be discouraged, because if we find something that allows us to live, and I'm talking about paying the basic bills, right? And of course, we hate doing it even. If it gets us through, we don't have to let it get us through a month, 2 months, whatever, until we see another opening. It takes so much time to develop not only the maîtrise, you might say, to use a French word, in an art, to become a master of what you do, but also to become an autonomous artist who makes a living from their art. Now, the minority of artists are able to achieve that. That's another dream, but it's a real minority. And they're not, and the masters often, as we see in history, were not able to achieve it. And the masters suffered incredibly because they couldn't make ends meet, even though they were masters, you know? So we don't know. We don't know what our future is. All we know is we have to create, if that's the way you feel. So we create. We try to put the least amount of time into our bills. So we try to reduce our aspirations from the material world and material needs to what is minimal. That's a big risk too, because sure, society will look at you when you're 22 and you have, you know, you're living in a little flat and you don't have a car, you know, they say, oh, he's a rebel, he's an artist. They look at you when you're 42 or 52 or 62, and sometimes it's not exactly as benign, and you don't feel always as benign. But that, again, that's another risk we have to take, and obviously they're already taking it because they went this far. So it's just, we have to try to find a way to keep also the faith in ourselves, and these few friends that we have, like yourself, that are so supportive and feel the same way. That's our sustenance, you see. We never need more than a couple of good friends in life. People don't need dozens and dozens of friends. Or one or two really good friends who understand because they're going through the same, and their values are similar. That can get us through. And the artists in general, and in art there's a lot of gradations too. Like I say, certain artists are this way, certain others. Certain artists can be very more traditional, conservative in the art. But certain artists of a certain kind have a bond, you know, and that bond will never change as far as their feeling, understanding of each other. So hopefully we find one or two like that and we stay close to those, you know, too.
That's like the moment Leith and I met and realized we both loved suicide. That bond. You know that bond, you're like, okay, you don't need to say anything else.
Well, it means it's a commonality when you both like a certain art, and especially when it's not an obvious art, like liking the monkeys or something, or the Beatles. So yeah, it reflects
The values.
values, taste, which is values. Yeah, right.
Thank you for this. Your words and this and my heart, and I feel whole.
Well,
with your work and the whole discussion, with the moment. Thank you
for being the person you are that feels whole to my words, and it makes me feel whole. And I thank you, Maze, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
You are. Tremendous love, and I promise you, there is no bigger dream for me than to book you to play in Jordan. So as soon as I have the chance, I'm getting on it.
You do it whenever you look into it as you would like, and when you would like, and you have a green light on both possibilities.
I'm getting my passport here now. Just as soon as it's out, then I can do whatever I want and go wherever I want. But it's in the process. So in a few months, I will have that freedom, and it's
good for you.
And thank you on behalf of everyone whose work you've supported. I'm not work, like everyone whose work you mothered, your art mothered, because like you said, we might not be in touch, all of us, but somehow we are connected, and through these frequencies of art, there's many frequencies that do connect us.
That's right.
And so we've familied each other, and
That's
thank
right.
you for people you've familied.
Well, thank you for becoming part of mine. You're very special.
Okay, much love. And I hope we talk again soon without even this recording.
Anytime. Okay.
Anytime. Okay. Have a wonderful night.
You too, darling.
Bye bye.
Ciao.